Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back the host of the conference, Michael Hennessy.
Thank you. So Paul, I think we just found your pipe. Okay, that, by the way, particularly for anybody that's still here from Bell Media Astral, was our regulatory guru, Jay Thompson, who, so good luck on that. Good luck to the Starlight guys. Jay's on that file too. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Matthew Diener. Matthew is Executive Director of the Screen Producers Association of Australia, so he's my confrere. And it's been really interesting this week to spend some time with somebody who's really trying to do the same job we are here in Canada, just in a bit of a warmer climate. For those that haven't had a chance to talk to the Australian delegation, one of the brilliant things they did on sort of coming from Australia to Los Angeles was stop in Winnipeg on the way. So they had, I think it was it a 70-degree change in temperature? But it was a dry cold. So Matthew's only been in his job a relatively short time, as have I. although I gather he's been working. And, you know, Matthew was appointed to steer the industry through the next critical stage. I did note, though, that in the press clippings regarding his appointment, they mentioned how youthful he is compared to his predecessor who retired. No one ever mentioned that about me when I left. And, you know, if there's at least one person that I'm younger than in the room, it was Norm Bolin. So this year at prime time, and you know, so we were really glad to hear not only the message that Paul Calandra gave from Minister Moore, but from Jean-Pierre today, from Kevin Kroll and others. This year at prime time, we've been trying to develop greater international opportunities for our sector, and you know, I was talking just to Laura McKenzie at Strategic Partners over the last couple of days, and I mentioned that Jan Miller, her predecessor, who everybody knows so well here, is going to be doing a little mentoring and working with me and the team to teach us just about who in the world of co-production we need to go and see. But with Matthew's help, so that's cool stuff that's coming. But with Matthew's help, we've already organized a small delegation of Australian producers to come to prime time. I think some of you have met Brian and Sue. Brian and Sue, why don't you just stand for a second? And, you know, we really hope these new connections are going to lead to some successful new international co-productions. And just take it a step forward, I'd also like to announce that, you know, we're in the planning stage of reciprocating with Australia and organizing a delegation of Canadian producers to go to SBAA's, I guess you just call yourself SPA, right? Like, that's kind of cool. I like that, you know, like I'm with SPA, you know. Anyways, so we're going to go to your annual conference next November, and I'm kind of really looking forward to this. This could be a lot of fun. But we're going to bring some producers with us too, because we're going to do some deals. So enough about that. Matthew, why don't you come up and entertain the audience, as I know you've been entertaining us for the last couple of days. You're a good man, mate.
Thanks. Well, hi, everyone. Look, it's an absolute pleasure to be here in Ottawa, to be attending my first primetime conference and to meet and engage with the Canadian production industry and my counterparts. I feel like they're my brothers and sisters at the CMPA. And if we can, let's just start first up with a clip.
Everything knows its place in the scheme of things. Everything sits in the order somewhere. You've got to decide. You've got to work out where you fit.
Since the very beginning, the way we've learned about who we are and where we've come from is through the stories we've told.
Welcome to Australia.
Hello. Hello, my countrymen.
From one generation to the next, we've passed down our history, beliefs, and a few jokes.
Do you have the Texas Chainsaw Mascara?
By simply telling each other how it was.
Coming close.
Or how we think it should be.
That's not a knife.
These days, the storytellers are still telling stories.
There's nothing wrong with dreams.
Tell him he's dreaming.
Stories of who we are.
Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me.
And who we might be.
There is no hiding. You cannot hide. You have to give your best.
Here we go then.
Let's shake this world.
In Australia, we have some of the best storytellers in the world. They entertain us. They inspire us. And they help fuel our economy. We think that's a story worth telling.
I like it.
So, thanks everyone. Look, I commissioned that clip when I was working at Screen Australia, which is an equivalent combination of Telefilm and the Canadian Media Fund. And it was shown in cinemas and on free-to-air and satellite television and social media sites throughout Australia. And it was a strategy to tap into something Michael talked about yesterday in his opening address, to remind everyone about what we do and to win over the hearts and minds in the Australian public. But perhaps more importantly, it was launched in Canberra, our nation's capital, to remind political leaders of our great storytelling traditions and to celebrate the Australian screen sector. And it's these stories that define us as people, as nations, as communities, shaping our thinking and our patterns of engagement with one another. The way in which we communicate and celebrate who we are on screens is so very important. It makes us find unity and harmony in disparate worlds, and it drives us to learn and connect with our fellow human beings. Our content creates opportunities for shared experiences, and without these shared experiences, a heterogeneous society has more difficulties addressing social problems and understanding one another. And this is a point that Chris Dodd was making yesterday. Our stories shape the social discourse across the globe. And we need to continually remind everyone about this, including ourselves, of this great importance and its power. And it's power shared by all screen practitioners across the globe. We are the most pervasive medium of entertainment and communication. More people than ever before are consuming screen content, and when they are, they're consuming more of it. And for an industry that might be pretty good that might be a pretty good story in its own right. However, it's only one part of a bigger picture, and it becomes a story that's broader, and it's about thousands of jobs we've been talking about for a while over the last day or so. Our businesses provide the employment, the globally transferable skills, the training and resources, the education. We continually invest in the digital and creative economies that are helping our countries to be clever, engaged, skilled, and economically strong. Every dollar invested by our governments to support our businesses to create content brings positive economic returns. In Australia, we convert over half of total annual investment from all sources in screen stories into a positive contribution into GDP. So it's an investment not only in our economy, but our industry also gives you back the bonus of great stories and a cultural return to the country. So unless we tell that full story, who will? But I'm jumping ahead a bit. I first came to Canada as a student at McGill in the mid-90s. And I know, I probably look younger, and in fact, I'm actually older than Michael. He didn't actually say that. It's all the clean living that us Australians are renowned for. I came from this to this. And it was my first exposure to the joys of a Canadian winter. Snowshoes, snow shovelling, snowbanks, snow ploughs, snow shovelling, snow festivals, snow shovelling, snow piled so high I couldn't figure out how a city could function. But then there are all the clothes. So I live at Bondi Beach, the other shot, in Sydney, where having a shirt attached to your body is a sign that you've made an effort to dress up. And you might all think that you take that for granted, but I had no idea how to wear galoshes, what a winter coat meant, where to put your mittens when you went out indoors and outdoors and outdoors and indoors, and what the hell those things are that you put over your shoes to protect them from salt. I don't even know what they're called. But then there was, of course, the cabana souks, skating in Old Montreal, walking in the forest in the Laurentians, aflame with maples, in autumn, or as you say here, the fall. And it wasn't just the true... Is that good? Is that good? It wasn't just the true north, strong and free in those great outdoors that I was getting mesmerised by. It was also the Canadian stories that I was watching on screens. And you might remember these. This is my era. It was the newsroom. It was Traders. It was This Hour Has 22 Minutes. It was Due South, north of 60. The Passionate Eye, Lilies. Remember that? Crash, Kissed, Fire. Hardcore Logo, La Polygraph and Project Grizzly. All on the cinemas or curled up into the couch in front of my TV. I didn't have an iPad at that stage. And in my apartment in Saint-Joseph when I really should have been studying. So for more than 60 years, the CMPA and its predecessor bodies has been protecting the interests of those that created these stories and a whole heap more, helping to construct the environment in which your screen industry flourishes. And the Screen Producers Association of Australia, or SPA, as Michael is proudly calling it now, I like that, it is our title, has a similar remit, and for about the same amount of time has had the same mandate. And it's no surprise, therefore, that SPA and the CMPA are working together to build greater collaboration and opportunities for all our members. And we hope in short order we can reach an agreement on the elements to be included in a formal memorandum of understanding between our organisations, which will be great. It'll be an exciting announcement when it happens, and we look forward to making it in the weeks ahead. And I'll touch on Brian and Sue as well, who many of you have met. Brian is our SPA's president, and both Brian and Sue are generous contributors to the organisation and to the Australian screen community, as well as being exceptional producers. Now, I took over the reins of the organisation just before Christmas, joining a proud and strong tradition of looking after the interests of all screen producers, large and small, the entrepreneurs, as we like to call them, the creative businesses that deliver games. We look after games and interactive content, documentaries, feature film, drama, kids, a whole range of other television programs, every screen item. So over the next few minutes, I wanted to step you through where we are for these creative entrepreneurs in Australia and where the challenges and opportunities lie for us in the future. So it is in equal parts comforting and alarming that we face pretty much the same issues as you do here. The same disruptive technologies, the same market pressures arising from your southern neighbour, the same financing structures and distribution arrangements that are difficult to adjust as we try, among them the king canutes, if you like, that attempt to hold back the tides of change. And in Australia, we have a $40 billion investment by our government in fast-speed broadband, accelerating that change faster than anything. So while change is the catalyst, adaptation has to be our response. And that will come to businesses that can achieve, we think, the following things. First, businesses that can build connections to and understandings of audience through powerful data use and social media will be able to vertically integrate and achieve greater success. Second, businesses that can access and engage internationally, both in partnerships and audiences, will rise to the top. And third, the businesses that develop successful plans that in turn provide investment opportunities, usually because of ownership and monetisation opportunities for intellectual property, will be able to even up the ups and downs of financing and survive in the long term. So where are we at the moment? To start, let me explain some of the underlying support structures that exist for our industry. Now, over time, they've contributed to the delivery of content to not just Australians, but of course, content that has travelled the world, as we saw some of it before. And these might look a little bit familiar to you. They are similar to those in Canada, and in many cases can be of direct benefit to Canadian producers who partner with Australian businesses under our official co-production program, which to date has raised more than $435 million in budgets over the last couple of decades. In Australia, there are three main policy levers. So there's direct funding through grants and investments by federal and state agencies. There's indirect incentives through various taxation benefits. We call them the offsets. And there's content regulation of our free-to-air and subscription television broadcasters through mechanisms such as quotas and expenditure requirements. And I want to dwell on that for a minute because the distinction between free-to-air and subscription television is quite important for us in a market where subscription television, although highly profitable, has a very low market penetration. It's approximately 25 to 30%. And so in Australia, the systems of support for television content are much more connected to the fortunes of those broadcasters that transmit over publicly owned spectrum, the free-to-air broadcasters. So it's a very different market. And that was partly because there was a lot of pushback to allowing cable and satellite operators to even start building services here in Australia. Only until the mid-90s did they actually start. So having said that, the current structures within our cable and satellite industry would surprise many of you. Through consolidation, we now have really only one cable and satellite television platform, a single platform called Foxtel for Australians to subscribe to. And over half the locally based channels are owned and operated by that same platform. So it reduces the markets for content and limits the opportunities for commissioning, such that ultimately one business is determining the commissioning for a very large number of channels. But like in Canada, television is the engine room for our content industry, enabling those businesses that are television focused often to be more sustainable and profitable. The changes to our television landscape are significant as viewers move to over-the-top content sites and time shift their viewing. And they're going to be the most impactful to our industry's structural transitions as is here. Now, it's been the combination of these three policy levers that over time have built our industry and supported our entrepreneurs. Whatever we say now and into the future, it will be the continuing use of these levers that are going to stimulate and advance the production and promotion of Australian content. And in so doing, they deliver sustainability to a sector and cultural and economic return to the nation. And we are similar to you. We don't say that from a position of expectation, but instead from the perspective of collaboration, both with government and with content platforms. Here you can see the different focus for each of the levers I was talking about in terms of government policy. You'll notice their reference to the producer offset, which is the largest source of indirect funding for Australian producers. So Australia's production industry underwent a shift about 5 years ago when the federal government introduced a range of reforms that reduced the sector's reliance upon direct funding. This saw a number of mergers of different screen agencies, a reduction in budget for direct investment, and an increase in indirect support through the producer offset. The offset provides a return to the producer on eligible Australian production expenditure, not just payroll, to the tune of 40% for feature films and 20% for television, drama and documentary productions mostly. The motivation was to develop a more sustainable sector, building support for production through market-driven incentives via the tax system, and reducing the need for excessive assessments by each project by the government bureaucracy, as was happening previously. Now, not long after, our national broadcaster, the ABC, received $67 million in funding for a dedicated children's channel and $70 million for adult drama, both over a 3-year period. And as it's turned out, this funding, which many producers have accessed and co-productions have been built around, has been crucial to supporting the drama and children's production at a time when all of our other broadcasters were reducing their funding. So since that time, a lot has changed. As we've been discussing here, the distribution mechanisms have been converging and the access points have been fragmenting. Television's remained resilient in Australia throughout that, with the overall proportion of people watching remaining steady, despite for many individual shows, the average audience being lower. But none of that should be taken for granted. We all know that younger, highly connected screen consumers are driving change. In my country, free-to-air TV has the most to lose. Interestingly, however, television is resilient in large part because of their investment in local content, in terms of Australian content. Local audiences love well-made local content. It's a statement that's true the world over. And it soon becomes the point of difference for platforms to have our content on them. Now, there is no evidence to suggest that these youthful adopters are going to discard their screen devices as they grow into time-poor adults. We know that they are motivated by greater depth of catalogue and control of their viewing environment, be it time or choice of platform. But this is the opportunity in Australia. Almost 2/3 of online viewers watch more feature films, television, drama and documentaries than ever before. They have augmented their viewing, adding more thanks to the internet. But of course now, and as we've been discussing, the challenge is to make them pay. And let me discuss some of the positives and negatives now on the policy front over the same time frame. So what's been achieved since the offset was introduced? Has it taken us further down the path to being more competitive and responsive to audiences, as had been the intention in the government's policies? So here are the positives. Production budgets are up and production businesses are more business-like. All the data we have shows that there is more money being put on screens, which is a great thing. Part of this has been due to various thresholds of expenditure needing to be met before tax offsets can be accessed. And this has had a knock-on effect to the business structure of a lot of businesses. The offsets allowed for some businesses to tap into these higher budgets with an improved equity share and position on the recoupment waterfall. And this means that production companies have focused upon the back end and the opportunities that this brings, transitioning businesses away from producer for hire arrangements that were more commonplace before the offset. And out of that, some businesses have done really well. For many, this has not just come away because of the offset, but also through specific funding programs, such as a program that we have in Australia called the Enterprise Program that is organised through Screen Australia. And this program offers significant amounts of money, we're talking millions of dollars, to successful applicants over a multi-year period, permitting the producer to invest in developing production slates or developing their business into different areas and bringing in more business infrastructure. So arguably this program has been more responsible for the structural changes in our industry than any other direct investment initiative. It has signalled to investors that screen businesses have potential and that their management are savvy. So alongside this, there's also been consolidation in the market, allowing for a growth in larger production companies by producers or creative teams who've come together under various strategies. And that's started to create longer-term relationships amongst industry players, but also between content distributors. We've had a couple of examples of content owners, such as a company called Matchbox being invested in by NBC Universal, and a number of smaller businesses kind of collaborating and coming together to form what we call super independents. And those relationships have assisted businesses to in turn develop their content slate and grow businesses' infrastructure. And it has always been about collaboration. But there have been some challenges in here too. So recent trends indicate that there's a plateau in quantity of content that's being produced in Australia at the moment. For television, this is largely because the broadcasters make only enough content to meet the requirements of their regulated content obligations. Now, that's probably no surprise to this crowd. These obligations have not expanded despite that broadcasters being given additional spectrum to launch additional digital channels. That was way back in 2001, and they were given a fair bit of hiatus to introduce those channels, and it looks currently as though the government won't introduce additional requirements on those channels. And they now broadcast in the vicinity of 90 to 95% foreign content, mostly US and UK. I don't know how much Canadian. We'd love it if there was more Canadian, but it's just the US and UK we're worried about. And in the case of subscription television, despite increasing profits and the earnings that have arisen out of those consolidations I was talking about, they haven't had any regulation increases as well. Now, for feature films, there have been many reasons why there hasn't been an expansion, but these can be largely summed up by a combination of limited theatrical distribution spots for the type of lower budget content at the levels of which many Australian productions are often able to be financed, and that's probably no different from here. We do get the odd breakout studio finance production. Recent examples are Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby or George Miller's Mad Max Fury Road, both of which are one's coming out this year, and I think Mad Max is nearly wrapped. But largely we're working with smaller budget ranges. And the opportunities for financing mid-range features in that $10 to $30 million category have dried up. And this is a shame, as there are many opportunities for these films to connect with audiences, both in Australia and internationally. And while our filmmakers are taking on the world with relatively small budgets, there have been projects that have been selected for Cannes and other A-list festivals over the last couple of years. We rarely provide these filmmakers with the step up into larger budgets, and so they invariably are lost into Hollywood for a while. So in order to change this, we must look at overseas partnerships, markets, and private financing more and more. Key to this predicament is that both high-end television and feature film have become dependent. Some would say addicted to our screen agency for direct investment in order that they be made. Now look, our agencies are fantastic. They're incredible resources for our industry. Screen Australia has driven change, as I said, through the Enterprise program that I talked about, and it has had a profound role to play in developing stories and in supporting culturally significant and the most financially vulnerable content. But it shouldn't be the only avenue that the most commercially viable projects are left to pursue. It is, however, happening, and it's simply because the producer offset, while providing a perfect policy framework, we love it in Australia, is really not set at the correct level now to permit the market to operate without needing additional government investment, as had been the original policy intent. So let me expand a little further on this point. So the offset was introduced prior to the rise in the Australian dollar, which, when combined with the GFC, removed many opportunities for international sales. It's probably exactly the same story here. And therefore, a large chunk of international investment that many types of Australian films and television had traditionally enjoyed was missing. And the resulting demand has been, Screen Australia has been left short of cash. In December, it announced that it had allocated its full-year investment budget effectively 6 months early. So, of course, that created an uproar, and it had ramifications now and is going to have ramifications upon our production sector this upcoming months as projects bank up and crew unemployment begins to experience peaks and troughs. And importantly, it prevents the market operating as it would do otherwise, leaving productions unable to attract the best talent, including directors and actors and below-the-line crew due to the uncertainty associated with financing. Which we worry about because it has the ability to affect the quality of our content. And look, in the scheme of things, this has been significant, but hopefully we'll get through it in the short term. But what it's also done is it's reduced the effectiveness of the sustainability policies that our government created, which resulted, and because of this effect, it's resulted in the merging of both sustainability and culture into the one combined exercise, as you can sort of see here, that's created frustration for the independent production community who've wanted that traditional separation in the policies. So the revenue possibilities and successful returns from the advantages of the producer offset have been very dependent upon the negotiating power of the producer for many years. And for many production companies, television broadcasters and channels are substituting or reducing their payments for the content by the amount of the offset. That's the other negative here. The absence of scrutiny over arrangements between our independent production sector and the broadcasters has long been a concern of the producing sector, and it was the subject of a lot of discussion at the time the offset was introduced. And while there exist terms of trade between our national broadcasters and the production industry, there isn't anything in place between the commercial sector. And so you take, for example, the contribution that commercial free-to-air networks have made over time to drama, and it's decreased. While budgets have risen, the percentage of investment has remained the same, and it's therefore reduced their relative investment in Australian content. In Canada, for your CRCC and for the UK's Ofcom, there is much greater scrutiny than in Australia over these arrangements, built into the regulator's powers and mandate. It creates a much more holistic system whereby there is proactivity about protecting the production industry and local content. You guys have it good. And this doesn't exist in Australia. But in various points over the time, it has been more of a cause for our regulator, who is the Australian Communications and Media Authority, and we're really asking them that they must be re-engaging again with the production community and proactive at this point in initiating reviews that focus upon the effects of changes to media platforms, because if they're not doing that, who is? And how this impacts upon creation and distribution of Australian content. Otherwise, they're missing the core objectives that their remit is, and they must be focusing again on production. So what should be done? Now, the federal government has conducted 2 significant reviews of the sector in the last couple of years. When I came here a year ago, I started talking to some of you about that, and it's an interesting point to have another reflect a year on, because both offer the possibility for generational change. The Convergence Review, which is the blue documents on the right of that slide, was established to examine the policy and regulatory frameworks that apply to the converged media and communications landscape in Australia. It was groundbreaking. It was the first one that was happening internationally. So a lot of interest was happening around it when it started. The National Cultural Policy was done in tandem, and it was aiming to set out support for arts, culture and creativity for the next 10 years, providing Australia with a common strategic direction and rationale for current and future investment globally. So the Convergence Review Committee handed down its final report to the government in March last year. The recommendations, and some of you have been talking to me about that the last couple of days, they were there and they were very good for our sector. They aimed to strengthen the industry in a number of different ways, but in reality, the government's made its first announcement before Christmas, and it's indicating that it's going to deliver very little for the production sector. Next week, the government is finally launching its long-awaited National Cultural Policy, but it's being done now in a climate where there is little funding available. So no one in Australia is chilling any champagne or any Fosters or any beer. The outcomes of these reviews are central to the government's arts and communications policies in the lead up to the federal election in September. So it's going to be an interesting few months ahead. Given this, I might end today with 5 strategic priorities that we are focused on in Australia that will help us as an industry realise our potential. This is our roadmap at the moment for where we need to be to thrive. First, we must strengthen the opportunities for market-driven productions. So in the absence of stronger Australian content regulations for local drama and documentary on free-to-air and subscription TV, the levels of high-quality local content will suffer. An increase in production incentives is going to enable producers to be more entrepreneurial in attracting market support and lessen their reliance on direct subsidy. And it's going to generate more possibilities for continuity of employment for actors and crews. Second up, we must increase and extend our foreign engagement through strengthening regional partnerships and ratifying and supporting more official co-pro agreements. In Australia, we've only got about 11 of these. You guys have got like 50 or something. So we're well behind the 8 ball. And especially given the opportunities in Asia at the moment, our government is being a little slow at the moment to advance our co-production agenda. And this will in turn secure greater inbound productions to help grow foreign investment, employment pathways and export opportunities. More strategies for working with you guys is the great first step. So third, there must be a stronger oversight of commercial standards from engaged regulators to ensure that appropriate returns are offered for content, and so that the industry can actually benefit from up-to-date and relevant arrangements that reflect current practices. Fourth, we must ensure adequate public broadcasting support. I think this is an ongoing theme in most countries, but our public broadcasters are currently in the process of their training or funding bids, and in recognising the contribution that they make to our screen ecology, it is crucial that support is provided to their ability to continue to service audiences of all ages with great content from the production community. And finally, fifth, we must nurture innovation and distribution models that apply and allow for multiple commissioning opportunities for our content. Emerging online distribution models have the potential to introduce new commissioning opportunities for the independent production sector. And this competition and engagement is increasingly important, as we all know, as media ownership changes and the shifting audiences and revenue streams affect our businesses. So whether we're talking about strengthening businesses, content and distribution, innovation, government incentives and private investment, we all must identify change and recognise the need to adapt to that change. And that brings me full circle to why one comes to a gathering like Primetime: to connect, to understand and to take stock of change. To reconnect with familiar faces and people, but also meet, in my case, the very new faces, and to figure out how to adapt changes to your production businesses, in your investment and distribution partners' businesses, and for the audiences for which we all serve. And it's the same reason we have our own SPA conference to be held in November in Melbourne. Now, there's plenty of time for you to book your tickets, so we hope to see some of you there. I promise that the weather will be a little sunnier. And until then, please enjoy your lunch, and let me again thank my host, the CMPA, and particularly Michael and Mark. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for their generosity, wisdom, and inspiration. It's been a really very rewarding couple of days for us, I think we'd all agree. It's been a great pleasure to meet all of you. I haven't met all of you, I've met many of you, but I look forward to meeting you before you end up packing away and going. And we do look forward to a long and fruitful partnership with you all into the future. So thank you very, very much for having us. Thank you.
So you can count on us being in Melbourne in November. I mean, even if we didn't have some serious business to do, I think I'd much rather be in Melbourne in November. That was an incredible video you did. But you know, if that's the best you can do in Melbourne in November, it's not going to be good enough for the one we're going to bring over and show you. So just to let you know, it's game on. Put a couple of steaks on the Barbie because we're coming. We're coming. So we have a few minutes while everybody can enjoy their lunch, and then we're going to be back jumping across the ocean the other way to hear from Will Evans from the British Film Institute. And he's going to be in conversation with the renowned Canadian producer, Sandra Cunningham, ex-chair of the board, but renowned Canadian producer now, which is probably probably a more material thing to be called than ex-chair of the CMPA. But, you know, I'm glad that, you know, without the leadership and you on the search committee, I might not even be here today. So Sandra is one of my favorite people. And Val Creighton, who gives us all the money. I love Val Creighton because, you know, Val's really nice. She gives us all the money. So is everybody, do we hear plates being served? People are really hungry. They're trying to get out of here and they're being polite to our guests because it would be very rude if you leave. Particularly with Norm Bolin coming up to finish off the thing. And then the iPod. And should I do the iPods after Norm or do you want to do the draw? Or before Norm? Oh, no, not now. Now, because you'd miss Sandra and Will Evans. But the Norm thing, we'll take a vote on it afterwards, okay? How's that? How's that? All right, so a few minutes. Enjoy your, I'm betting it's Friday, right? Enjoy your salmon. We should have a lottery on that.
Be satisfied, get your finger out of it, it don't belong to you.